Afghanistan, Abdul Jabbar. He was suspected of more than 300 murders, sentenced to death, and executed in 1970 after killing 65 men and boys by assaying them and strangling them with turbans. Algeria, Madeleine Mouton. A French serial killer known as the Berthelot poisoner, she poisoned 11 individuals, 7 of whom died. She was found guilty of these crimes, given a death sentence, and subsequently put to death. She was the only woman executed in French Algeria and the second to last French woman to be guillotined. Argentina, Robledo Puch, the Black Angel, often called the Angel of Death, was found guilty of 17 robberies, 1 instance of sexual assault, 2 kidnappings, 2 thefts, at least 11 murders, including the murder of at least 1 accomplice, 1 attempted murder, and complicity in 1 rape and 1 attempted rape. Australia, Eric Edgar Cook. From September 1958 until August 1963, this serial killer, known by the nicknames Nightcaller and Nedlands Monster, terrorized Perth, Western Australia. Cook was responsible for at least 20 violent offenses, 8 of which were fatal. After going on a murderous rampage for 4 years, Cook was apprehended and confessed to a number of crimes, including ones for which other people had been falsely convicted. The Supreme Court of Western Australia found him guilty of willful murder after a jury dismissed his claim of insanity. He received a death sentence and was executed at Fremantle Prison. Cook was Western Australia's final execution. Austria, Max Gaffler. He killed 4 women and he was suspected in up to 18 killings. He was apparently prone to angry outbursts after being hit on the head with a rock when he was 9 years old. Gaffler used matrimonial ads to attract his victims, who were then killed. Bahamas, Cordell Farrington. Between 2002 and 2003, he murdered his lover and 4 children. He was given a death sentence for the murder of 22-year-old Jamal Robbins, but due to his insanity, he was then given a second term of life in prison. Bangladesh, Roshu Ka. Roshu murdered at least 11 garment workers in Chandpur district because he was furious that his lover had rejected him. He killed them viciously after pretending to love them. He received a death sentence. Barbados, Mark Beckles. 4 confessed victims but suspected of several more. He took his own life with a shoelace in prison in 2003. Belarus, Gennady Mikashevich. Between 1971 and 1985, he looked into his own mission-driven killings of 36 women while volunteering for the police. In 1987, he was put to death. Belgian Congo, William Eunuch. He was slain by the police in 1957 after going on 2 mass killing sprees in Tanganyika and the Belgian Congo 3 years apart as a Ugandan police constable. Belgium, Michel Belen. He was a murderer who is regarded as the first serial killer in Flanders and is also known as the Strangler of the Left Bank. Between 1964 and 1982, he assayed and murdered 4 women in Leuven. He was given a death sentence, which was later changed to life in prison. In 2020, he passed away from heart failure while incarcerated. Bolivia, Ramiro Artieda. For financial gain, he murdered his brother in the early 1920s. After that, he moved to the US, but he eventually went back and murdered 7 women till 1938. In 1939, he was taken into custody, confessed, and was put to death by firing squad. Bosnia and Herzegovina, Edin Gacic. Between 1998 and 2019, he shot and killed 4 people, including a police officer and his mother. In 2019, security agents ultimately killed him. Brazil, Francisco das Chagas Rodrigues de Brito. He is a pedophile who, between 1989 and 2003, sexually assaulted, killed, and disfigured 30 to 42 young boys in Maranhão and Pará. He received a 217-year prison sentence for his crimes. Bulgaria, Sokrat Kirchveng. He gained notoriety as the killer with the ads and was given the death penalty in 1919 for the murders of 2 of his lovers. After his sentence was reduced to 17 years in prison, he killed his aunt and uncle-in-law in 1937. He was put to death the same year. Canada, Robert Pickton. He was charged with killing 26 women and he confessed to 49 murders in total. He was killed by a fellow prisoner in 2024. Chile, Julio Segundo Perez Silva. At least 14 women and girls were essayed and killed by this taxi driver in the northern Tarapacá region. He is a person of interest in 5 more disappearances as well. China, Chen Fuzhao. He was a dermatologist who mixed rat poison in drinks and then gave them to beggars. He was executed in 2024 by firing squad. Colombia, Daniel Camargo Barbosa. He was known as the sadist of El Charquito. He essayed and murdered 72 young girls, but he is believed to have killed as many as 180. He was killed in prison by a relative of one of his victims. Costa Rica, Adrian Arroyo Gutierrez. Known as the Southern Psychopath, he was convicted of raping and strangling 6 to 11 drug-addicted sex workers in San Jose and received a 110-year prison sentence. Croatia, Vinko Pintaric. Between 1973 and 1990, he killed 5 people, including his own wife. He managed to escape custody 3 times until he was eventually killed by police in 1991. Cyprus, Nikos Metaxas. He is a Cypriot army officer who committed the so-called Mitsero killings, killing 5 women and 2 children between September 2016 and August 2018. He was given a life sentence. Czech Republic, Petr Zelenka. He is a male nurse who murdered 7 of his patients with heparin lethal injections in 2006. He was sentenced to life in prison. Denmark, Peter Lundin. He killed his mother in the United States in 1991. Then 9 years later in Denmark, he killed his lover and her 2 children. He was given a life sentence. Ecuador, Juan Fernando Hermosa. He was the youngest serial killer in this country. Between 15 and 16 years of age, Hermosa was known as Niño del Terror because of his 22 killings in just 4 months, which included the deaths of 8 taxi drivers, 11 homosexuals, a truck driver and his friend, and 2 more people. Because he was so young, he only spent 4 years in prison and then he was released. The day he turned 20, he was found dead with his face disfigured and showing signs of torture. Egypt, Ramadan Abdel Rahim Mansour. Over the course of 7 years, he essayed and murdered over 32 children. He threw them off trains or he buried them alive. He was executed in 2010. Estonia, Johannes Andreas Hani, murderer, rapist, and cannibal who killed 3 people in 1982 before taking his own life while being held by the police. His wife helped him commit the murders. She spent 12 years behind bars, after which she changed her name, moved to Finland, and even wrote a book about all of this. Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland. David Thabo Simelane. He essayed and murdered 28 women in the span of 1 year between 2000 until 2001. He is believed to have committed over 45 killings. He received a death sentence. Fiji, Waisale Wakwanivalu. He bludgeoned 3 couples in 2003. 5 people died and 1 survived. He got 29 years in prison. He is considered the first serial killer in the country. Finland, Jukka Lindholm, also known as Michael Pentila. He was sentenced to life in prison and is presently contesting the ruling. He has served 25 years in prison between his murders. He killed 3 women in the Oulu area between 1985 and 1993 and 1 in Helsinki in 2018. He is the only Finn who meets the FBI's criteria for being considered a serial killer. France, Michel Fourniret. At least 8, maybe more than 12 young girls were abducted, essayed, and killed by the Ogre of the Ardennes. This happened in France and Belgium with the assistance of his wife, Monique Olivier. Germany, Niels Hogel. He was a male nurse who killed between 106 and 300 patients over the course of 5 years. He is serving a life sentence. Ghana, Charles Kwanzaa. He was convicted and sentenced to death for the strangling murders of 9 women, but suspected of killing 34. Greece, Petros Koulaxidis. Known as the Vampire of Hamelos, this Russian-born bigamist was executed in 1932 for killing at least 5 of his wife in Central Macedonia between 1917 and 1930. He also faced allegations of committing further killings, some of which may have taken place in Russia. Guatemala. Jose Miculax Bux, known as the Monster of Guatemala, he and his cousin Mariano Macum Miculax slaughtered 15 youngsters in 1946. He was publicly executed by firing squad. Hong Kong. Lam Kor Wan, sexual sadist who murdered and dismembered 4 women in the 1980s. He was initially sentenced to death but later commuted to life in prison. Hungary. Piroshka Young Solandani. Between 1953 and 1954, he strangled 5 teenage girls and molested their bodies after they were killed. He was executed in 1954. Iceland. Bjorn Pettersson. He was a serial killer from the 16th century who killed 9 travelers. He is thought to be the only serial killer of this country. India. Ravinder Kumar. Between 2008 and 2015, he kidnapped, essayed, and killed at least 15 children. After being caught on July 19, 2015, he admitted to killing 30 children in all. He specifically targeted poor families' children. The majority of his victims were between the ages of 4 and 6. Indonesia. Slamet Tohari. He is a con artist who between 2020 and 2023 poisoned at least 12 individuals in central Java. In 2024, he was given the death penalty. Iran. Farid Baglani. He is known as the cyclist killer, and he murdered 15 women and 1 boy over the span of 4 years from 2004 till 2008. He was executed in 2010. Iraq. Ali Asghar Borujerdi. He murdered 33 young adults for which he was executed in 1934. He was the first serial killer in this country from the 20th century. Ireland. Mark Nash. In 1997, he murdered 2 female patients and then a couple 4 months later. He received a life sentence. Israel. Nikolai Bonner. Immigrant who killed 4 homeless people in 2005. He burned their bodies after the murders. He is serving a life sentence. Italy. Donato Bilancia. He was named the Monster of Liguria. He murdered 17 people over the course of 7 months. He died in prison. Jamaica. Lewis Hutchinson. He was a Scottish immigrant who was hanged in 1773 after being found guilty of shooting numerous people in the 18th century. Japan. Hiroshi Maue. An Osaka man, dubbed as the Suicide Website Murderer, enticed members of suicide clubs with the promise that he was going to kill himself alongside his victims. He was put to death in 2009. Jordan. Bilal Musa and Susan Ibrahim. This is a couple who murdered 12 people to rob them between 1994 and 1998. Musa was executed in 2000, and a year later, in 2001, Ibrahim died in prison. Kazakhstan. Yuri Ivanov. He essayed and murdered 16 young women who he believed were insulting men. The crimes happened between 1974 and 1987, and he was executed in 1989. Kyrgyzstan. Viktor Selikov. He was named the Naked Demon, and he essayed women, at least 10 women, out of which he killed 3. He was executed in 1965. Latvia. Kaspars Petrovs. He murdered between 13 and 38 elderly women until 2005 when he was caught. He received a life sentence. Lebanon. George and Michael Tanyelian. They robbed and killed 11 taxi drivers in 2011 over the span of 5 months. They were both sentenced to death. Lithuania. Kazis Žanaitis. He was convicted of murder for the first time in 1984, but after he was released, he essayed and decapitated 3 women from 2000 till 2001 when he was apprehended and got a life in prison sentence. He was named the Roadside Maniac. Malta. Silvio Mangione. 3 old retirees were killed in robberies between 1984 and 1998 by Malta's only known serial killer, who was given a life sentence. Mexico. Andres Ulises Castillo Villarreal. The Chihuahua Ripper, who drugged, essayed, killed, and disfigured 3 men in Chihuahua in 2015, confessed to 12 further killings but was suspected of committing 20 in all. He was given a 120-year prison sentence. Moldova, Alexander Skrinik. He murdered 3 women and then he mutilated their bodies between 1970 and 1980. He was executed in 1981. Morocco, Abdelali Hadi. He essayed and killed 9 children between 2001 and 2004. He received a death sentence, but he ended up dying of natural causes in 2022. He was known as the Butcher of Terradont. Netherlands, Frans Huijmaiers, a nurse who poisoned at least 5 people with insulin between 1970 and 1975, but is suspected of causing 259 deaths overall. He was given a life sentence, which was later reduced to 18 years, and he was released in 1987. He passed away in 2006. New Zealand, Hayden Poulter. He was convicted of 3 murders he committed in 1996, but he claimed he was responsible of more than that. He took his own life in 2018. Nigeria, Gracious David West. He confessed to murdering 15 women in 2019. In 2020, he received a death sentence. North Korea, Park Myung-sik. He killed 12 teenagers in 1990 because he wanted to consume their livers. He thought this would cure his cirrhosis. He was executed in 1990. North Macedonia, Vlado Taneski. He was a serial killer and journalist from Macedonia. In June 2008, he was arrested for the killings of 2 women about whose deaths he had also written freelancing articles. At the time of his arrest, he was also under investigation for the death of another lady. The police were suspicious of his articles because they had information that had not been made public. Taneski was detained and put in jail on June 22, 2008 after DNA evidence linked him to the killings. He was found dead in his cell the following morning. Norway, Arnfinn Nesset. The manager of a geriatric care home in Orkdal was found guilty in 1983 of poisoning 22 people with succinylmetonium chloride over a number of years. Pakistan, Javed Iqbal. He essayed and killed 100 young boys. He strangled them, dismembered them, and then dissolved the remains in acid. He took his own life in 2001 while incarcerated. Panama, Silvano Ward Brown. Called the Panama Strangler, the first serial killer in Panamanian history, he strangled 3 women between 1959 and 1973. He was apprehended, incarcerated, and held behind bars for 10 years, but then in 1993 he was released. Paraguay, Agustin Ramon Martinez. A Paraguayan Israeli criminal known as the Israeli Soldier was convicted of killing, dismembering, and burning at least 6 people in Argentina and Paraguay between 1993 and 2018. He was also accused of killing his wife in Israel and received a 40-year prison sentence. Peru, Pedro Pablo Nakada Ludena. He was named El Apóstol de la Muerte, the Apostle of Death. He was convicted of 17 murders, and he claims it was more like 25. He received a 35 years in prison sentence. He will probably be released sometime in 2042 at around 68 years of age. Philippines, Juan Severino Malari. Between 1816 and 1826, a Roman Catholic priest murdered at least 57 parishioners in an attempt to treat his mother's hexing. He spent 14 years in prison before being put to death in 1840. Poland, Mariusz Sowinski. Known as the Stefanovice Vampire, he was given a 50-year prison sentence for essaying and killing 4 women between 1994 and 1997. When he turns 71 in early 2047, he will be eligible to apply for conditional early release. Portugal, Antonio Luis Costa. 3 women were murdered between 2005 and 2006 by a retired GNR officer from Santa Comba Dao, who was given a 25-year prison sentence. Romania, Ion Râmaru. He was a serial killer known as the Vampire of Bucharest. Between 1970 and 1971, he crippled Bucharest, murdering 4 women and assaulting around 10 more. Before his arrest, authorities had detained more than 2,500 people. After they were already dead, the women were essayed, bitten on the thighs and breasts, and struck with an axe. Ion Râmaru's father, Florea Râmaru, was also a serial killer. He died falling off a train, and when his body was sent to a medical institute, his height paired with his shoe size attracted attention because that was consistent with some unresolved murder statistics and pieces of evidence. When they checked his fingerprints, they found their killer. A psychologist said that it was likely that a gene predisposing one to violent crimes was passed from father to son, as the murders happened under remarkably similar circumstances without Ion knowing his own father was a serial killer like himself. Ion Râmaru was executed by firing squad. Russia. Radik Tagirov, the Volga Maniac, was the name given to Tagirov's murders of 31 single women between the ages of 75 and 90 in the Volga and Ural federal districts between March 2011 and September 2012. He was given a life sentence. Rwanda. Denis Kazungu. He murdered 14 people at his home, most of which were women. He was arrested and pled guilty in 2023. He received a life sentence in 2024. Saudi Arabia. Auda Ahmad Avdah Salem. The Yemeni immigrant known as the Yambu serial killer was executed in August 2014 after essaying and killing 3 Indonesian housemaids between 2007 and 2009 and burying their bodies. Serbia. Baba Anushka. She poisoned between 50 and 150 people before she was detained in 1928. Singapore. Sek Kim Wah. The Andrew Road triple killings were committed by a 19-year-old NS conscript who was hanged in 1988 after killing 5 people between June and July 1983 in 2 separate murder cases. To date, Singapore has only had 1 serial killer, and it was this one. Slovakia. Ondrej Rigo. Known as the Sock Killer, he was given a life sentence after killing, essaying, and disfiguring 9 women in the Netherlands, Germany, and Slovakia while always wearing socks on his hands. He died in 2022 while incarcerated. Slovenia. Silvo Plut. He murdered 3 women in Slovenia and Serbia between 1990 and 2006. In 2007, he committed suicide while incarcerated. South Africa. Jack Mogal. He kidnapped, essayed, and murdered 16 women in southern Johannesburg. He was named the West End Killer. South Korea. Jong Nam-gyu. He killed 14 people and essayed them between 2004 and 2006. He passed away in a hospital after failing to hang himself the day before. Spain. José Antonio Rodriguez Vega. The old lady killer, he essayed and killed at least 16 elderly women. He was sentenced to 440 years in prison in 1995. He was eventually murdered by fellow inmates in 2002. Sweden. Anders Hansen. He was a hospital orderly in Malmö who poisoned his victims with detergents Gevisol and Divisol between October 1978 and January 1979. His actions were called the Malmö Östra Hospital murders. A total of 27 patients died because of his actions. He was just 18 years old when he committed the crimes. He was sentenced to close psychiatric treatment, where he remained until 1994. Switzerland. Roger Andermatt, known as the Death Keeper of Lucerne, he is a nurse who murdered 22 people between 1995 and 2001 and received a life sentence. Taiwan. Chen Jui-chin, known as the Chiai Demon, he was executed in 2013 after killing 5 family members and 1 girlfriend between 1985 and 2003 in order to obtain insurance money. He was also suspected of being involved in 2 other disappearances. Thailand. Charles Sobraj. He is known as the Serpent. He was incarcerated in India and Nepal. He was responsible for the deaths of at least 12 Western tourists in Southeast Asia in the 1970s. He was released in 2022. Tunisia. Nassor Damerji. In the 1980s, a rapist known as the Butcher of Nabeol murdered 13 children, and he was put to death in 1990. Turkey. Yavuz Yapcioglu. Referred to as the Screwdriver Killer, from 1994 to 2002, he committed at least 18 homicides. He is considered the most prolific serial killer of this country. Ukraine. Anatoly Onoprienko. He is known as the Terminator. He killed 52 people from 1989 until his capture in 1996. He died in prison in 2013. UK. John Hay, the acid bath murderer, killed people for cash and then dissolved their corpses in sulfuric acid. He is thought to have murdered between 6 and 9 people, and he was executed in 1949. U.S. William Bonin, known as the Freeway Killer, he preyed on young men and boys in Southern California with several accomplices. He murdered at least 21 victims, and he is believed to have actually killed over 36 people. He was executed in 1996. Uruguay. Pablo Garcia Cejas, known as the Maldonado murderer, he was given a 30-year prison sentence for killing 3 acquaintances in the Maldonado department between April and June 2015. Uzbekistan. Zoki Dotaboev. Between 2010 and 2017, he killed 3 of his neighbors' kids in order to get even with them for making fun of him. He was given a life sentence. Venezuela. Dorangel Vargas, known as El Come Gente in San Cristobal Tajira, he slaughtered and cannibalized 10 men between 1997 and 1999. In 2016, he killed 4 more while incarcerated. Vietnam. Le Tan Van, known as the Cyanide Witch, she was executed in 2005 after poisoning at least 13 people with cyanide to steal from them, occasionally with her husband's assistance. Yemen. Abdallah Al-Ubal. He killed 3 individuals and a young couple in 1998 after escaping from jail. He killed 7 people in 1990 following Yemen's unification and was killed in a gunfight with the police. Zambia. Milton Sipalo, referred to as the Lusaka Strangler, he murdered 29 women and girls in Lusaka between January and September 1980. He committed suicide prior to his trial in 1980. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye-bye.